My name is Rose, and I'm an alcoholic.
Rose.
My home group is the Sunday Attitude Adjustment group at Alano. My sponsor is Anna Kay. And by the grace of God and the program of AA, I have not had a drink or a drug since April 28th, 2018. Thank you. Before I start, just thank you again to the Sparta Group. I was supposed to speak a while back, and COVID stopped me that time. So Mariah, thank you for your persistence and having me. I would like to start with the set-aside prayer. So if you know the set-aside prayer, you can join me. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery for a new experience in you, God, a new experience in myself, a new experience in my fellows, and a much-needed new experience in my own recovery. Amen. I did speak at the Primary Purpose Group a couple weeks ago, so if you were there, there might be some repeats. Sorry about that. But I had spoken several times before that. The first time was at the Fun in the Sun picnic I was just 2 years sober. And they had asked me to speak mostly because of my service and just the work that I had done within service and the impact it had on my recovery. And in that time, as well as another time, I really spent a lot of my speech about really what I thought was qualifying myself as an alcoholic by telling all the awful stories of things that we do. And so there was, the stories of, driving drunk with kids in the car, losing jobs, messing up relationships, towards the end, drinking from the beginning, when I woke up to when I went to sleep. All of those things are similar to many of us, but what I later found out when I started really getting in the big book with my sponsor is that those don't actually qualify me as an alcoholic. And I learned in We Agnostics on page 44, they have kind of the two-step qualifier as to, if I want to decide that I'm an alcoholic. The first is that when you honestly try to quit, you cannot stop drinking entirely without help. And the second is if when you take a drink, you have little control over the amount you take, then you are likely an alcoholic. And for me, those were both true. I first experienced alcohol when I was 14, and through high school, binge drinker in college. I grew up in Wisconsin, so that's kind of what we do. So that wasn't anything weird for where I was. And, there was a couple bouts in my life that I didn't drink. They were when I was pregnant, so that was the reason why. But I didn't always have the relationship I had with alcohol. That for sure is something of the progression of our disease. I often just used alcohol as a way to get a feeling. Definitely, I am an introvert, so crowds are not my thing, people are not my thing, and so I would use that as kind of a lubricant to be able to be in the room with you and not want to crawl out of my skin. So I use that a lot in situations to kind of loosen myself up so I at least felt like I belonged or was not standing out so much within a group. But really when I started to have a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol, it's when I started to use it to get rid of a feeling. So when I was in college, when I was a sophomore in college, I found myself pregnant, and that just is not something you do in my family. And so it was a very stressful time. It was definitely a time that I disappointed my family even further than I already had. And I knew that I was not going to be able to care for that child and give her or him the life that they deserved. And so I ended up working with Lutheran Social Services to select a family that would adopt her in an open adoption. And I pursued that, met a family, and did that. And that was probably the most painful thing I've ever done in my life. It's an open adoption, so I've been very close to my daughter. Her name is Nina Rose, since she was born. I've seen her twice a year, every year since she was born. She's 21 now and in college. It's just been one of the most beautiful opportunities for me, but one of the most painful. During that time, that is probably the first time I started to use alcohol to get rid of a feeling. For those who have had children, it's literally like your heart is living outside of your body. And so to have that child and then to have to hand that child away just added to the sense of emptiness that I had inside of myself even before that. So that is really when I started to use alcohol to get rid of feelings. And that worked for a while. I got married, had 2 children. That didn't go very well, so we parted ways. And really, I talk about my disease has had a conversation with me in my head for a long time, since I was a little girl. When I think back to that this is a progressive disease, it leads me then to know that this had to have been in my being before I even picked up a drink. And that's so true. When I look back to even elementary school, I was completely felt out of place. I didn't belong here. I didn't belong in my family. I didn't belong on earth. I just was completely lost. And that sense of emptiness inside I tried to fill with alcohol, food, men, relationships, whatever. And it just never seemed to get smaller. It just got bigger. And so the narrative in my mind of you're not worth keeping, you're not good enough, you're not worth fighting for, those things, my disease took hold when I got divorced, and used that narrative to really keep me committed to the one thing that was never going to leave me, and that was alcohol. And that cycle continued and obviously just got worse as time went on. When I moved here with my mom about 7 years ago, my dad had passed away, so I came to live with her and to help her. And that actually allowed my alcoholism to get fueled a little bit more because it was myself, my boys, and my mom. So I had another adult in the household to watch my children, so I was able to relax, if you will, a little bit more. I knew that I had a problem long before I was ready to stop. Alcoholism is in my family. My parents are both alcoholics. Goes way back in the family tree. So it wasn't something that I wasn't familiar with, but I certainly wasn't ready to call it. And I actually found myself one morning. I was supposed to go into work and run an event, and I ended up in my office kind of on the floor with extreme pain in my stomach, and went to the ER and had pancreatitis. And I told myself that I had that pancreatitis because of something other than alcohol. I read everything I could to justify that was only one reason why you could have pancreatitis. I also created a narrative that it was my high blood pressure that I had to go into the ER for. So I just was completely in denial and embarrassed. And I had a counselor at that time that I remember saying to her, I am not ready to say never. I can't say I would never drink again. I can't say I can watch a football game without drinking. I can have Oktoberfest without drinking. I just can't. I cannot say it. And I remember a friend was coming in town, so I was white-knuckling it. I had heard of AA through the movies, but and through my mom saying, maybe you should check that out. But that's really all I knew. But I was kind of white knuckling it. I remember saying to her, I have a friend coming in town, and I told him maybe we shouldn't drink, and he said okay, and I said that's really weird. Why? Like, what do you mean, like, just okay? And she said, well, people who aren't alcoholics can take it or leave it. It doesn't matter. They could have it not at all. They could have it next year. They could have it. It doesn't matter. And that was baffling to me. I didn't understand that at all. But long story short, 80 days sober, this person comes in town, and there goes my sobriety. And that was the last year of my drinking. And it was, as they say, you pick up right where you left off, and it gets even worse. And it was a bad year. It was a bad year, and about almost to the day, just a month shy, I was in the hospital again with pancreatitis. And this time it was not like last time. It was really bad. And I remember getting that pain in my stomach early that morning, and or late that night, and I decided that I should probably finish drinking before I went to the ER. And so did that, and then went. This time I just said, Mom, drop me off. I knew what was happening, and I knew the drill, and I was in there for 6 days, and they weren't sure that I was going to make it out of there. I remember my mom, so at that time my boys were 5th grade and 4th grade, and I remember talking to her on the phone from the hospital, and she said, last night I stayed up thinking about what I'm going to do if you don't come home, how I'm going to raise your boys, what am I going to, she's 70 years old, how can I do this? And at that moment, it still gives me goosebumps. I remember that was it. I had to do something. I had no idea what. I just knew that I couldn't do it, and that I needed help. And when I was in there was a nurse in there who I was in orthopedics because they were out of room. So these people never normally had an alcoholic who was in there for pancreatitis. But I just happened to be in there. I happened to be in that ward, and I happened to be there when she was there. And she, one night when she was helping me get situated, very softly said to me, there is another way. And she said, I'm 7 years sober. I met my husband in sobriety. We go to the Thursday downtown 12 and 12. And there is another way. And I never actually saw her in the rooms. I just met her again at Scott's house. And I was able to go to her and say, you completely changed my life. And that is the 12-step perfect example of this is just for me what I did. There is another way. And she said, I plant seeds all the time, and who knows what ever takes. But she saved my life. And she was the first example of AA that I ever had. And I am grateful for that. And I believe that was, for me, a higher power moment that she was placed in my path. And I was able to hear her in that moment. So I left the hospital, and probably a little too early, but I needed to get home and, deal with being a mom and relieving my mom. And I got into IOP, so intensive outpatient at Gunderson in Onalaska with Karen C. Completely changed my life. I was, many of you can probably relate. I was completely beaten at that point. So I was really willing to do whatever, and I really couldn't handle a lot. So I went, that was my day. I went and cried and yelled and, with these people 4 days a week, and did a lot of sleeping and self-care and a lot of meetings, and, got through just day by day by day. And there's people in that group who are still very close to me. I met my husband in that group, Jacob, and so he's stuck with me. And It really was. It's been a beautiful experience of recovery and really introduction to this amazing recovery community that we have here in the region and in La Crosse. So that began my journey of AA. I did a lot of meetings. I was in IOP for 3-4 months. I ended up transitioning to relapse prevention. A lot of meetings, and especially my home group, which was Sunday attitude adjustment. There was somebody who told me about that meeting, and I just started going. And if you haven't been to that meeting, I highly recommend it. There's immense amount of recovery, but there's also, the newcomer just walking in the door, and then there's individuals who've, had 40 plus years. Just a really great attitude adjustment and a great way to start the week. So I started to listen. I started to hear you. I heard you say this is, a thinking disease. It's not a drinking disease. I heard you with all the sayings and all of the, you can drink tomorrow, Rose, but maybe not today. All of the things that got me through those 24s. I got phone numbers. I reached out, which was extremely hard for me. And I started to feel relief. The days started to add up, and I started to feel a part of the fellowship. And I was sitting in a meeting and heard about Care and Share, that they needed somebody to serve in that role. So I took that on. That was way more than I thought it would be. But it really changed the level of recovery for me. So it's a strange thing when you serve, even if you're a treasurer or a chair or a backup chair or a whatever. They depend on you, so it doesn't work to drink because they need you to not do that. And so I started to have people depend on me, and I was able to use some of my gifts in a way to carry the message to those who still suffered. And it just really transformed my entire journey and the level of recovery that I had. I started to feel immense relief, and I was reading just a couple weeks ago in the 12 and 12, they were talking about I just read it again this morning at a meeting, two-stepping. And I had heard that but not really understood it, and the concept that I realized that's exactly what I was doing. So I was very committed to step 1 to 3. So step 1, I can't. Step 2, God can. Step 3, I think I'll let him. I would do that every day. And then I'd jump down to 12, and I would help people through Care and Share, and I'd serve at a meeting, or I'd do all these things. And that worked for a while, and it kept, I had relief. I had lost the obsession to drink. I wasn't picking up, so I didn't have the physical allergy of, needing to drink, being triggered. But eventually, I realized the third aspect of our disease, which is the spiritual malady, was really killing me. I was struggling in my relationships. I was struggling with my job. I was just struggling. And I wasn't sure why or what more I could do. In retrospect, I did have a sponsor who I called sometimes. To no fault of her effort. We talked a lot about doing the steps. We just, I think we did step 1 and 2 forever. So I just never progressed in that. I started to have women ask me about sponsorship, which if you've ever been asked to sponsor before you've sponsored, it's rather terrifying. It's terrifying to ask somebody to sponsor you, but it's also terrifying to be asked because I thought, well, I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know. I haven't been through the steps. And so I knew that I needed to progress on the list on the wall past 3. And, I was creeping into my 3rd year, so it was way about time. I sure talked a lot about it at meetings, but that doesn't quite work. That just is a little sliver, of things. So finally the time came. I was actually at a meeting on Sunday, and another gal in recovery, she's actually a little bit younger in sobriety date. Her and I were just chatting, and she said, how many sponsees do you have? And I said, I don't have any. And she kind of looked at me shocked. And then I said, how many do you have? And she said, I have several. And so during that whole meeting, I thought about, I have seen her grow. I've seen her change her interaction with people. I've seen the steps. I knew who her sponsor was, and I just knew that it was time. And so after that meeting, I went straight for Anna and said, would you help me? I need to get through the steps so I can sponsor other women. And she said yes, and she hasn't fired me yet. And I did not quite know how much this journey and the relationship would change my life, but it completely changed everything. The first time that we met, she went over what she expects as a sponsor. And she sponsors her sponsees, how her sponsor sponsors her. The lineage of sponsorship is important. Personally, if my sponsor doesn't have a sponsor, then that's not somebody that I can match with. So it's really important for me to know, I'm learning from her sponsor and what her sponsor taught her. And I know that through the stories we have, which is just really awesome to know that we're part of a lineage that goes all the way back to the founders of the program. So part of the day, so the daily reprieve she talked about, this daily reprieve that we have, and on page 85 into action it says, "It is not easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition." So the 5 things of the daily reprieve that we do, I do with her, and my sponsees do with me. The first is that I call my sponsor every day. That seems to be a hard one for people. Every day, or, don't you get tired of calling her, or doesn't she get tired of answering, but I drank every day, so I can call every day. And the reason my calling is very important for me is that it's a little bit of a surrender. As I mentioned, I'm an introvert, so if I had a choice to be in my bed right now or here, I might choose here. No, I would choose to, that's not what I do. I don't like to talk on the phone. I've never liked to talk on the phone. So me calling her is surrendering to that. I'm doing what she told me to do, which is actually following directions. So a little bit of surrender there. And then on the days that it's easy to call, that's great. But on the days that I have a terrible day, I can forget to call. Those are actually days that I say, well, did you call your sponsor? And, well, no, I don't know why I wouldn't think of that. So if I'm doing it on a daily basis, then I do it on the days that are awful. And that helps me I talk about the daily reprieve for me as like putting on my armor to help combat the possibility that I could relapse. If that be that physically relapse by drinking or spiritually relapse. So calling her every day. I go to a meeting. I can't go to a meeting every day, but every day that I can, I do. And for me, what I do is if I'm unable to go to a meeting, I listen to a speaker. So I go on YouTube. There's 5 million speakers. That is just like going to a meeting for me. It keeps me out of myself. It keeps me living in the solution. It keeps me listening to other people, remembering that I am not terminally unique, that there is a solution if I want it, and it helps to keep me remembering all types of things, that other people have awful situations that are worse than mine, that it's important for me to, when I'm at a meeting, to contribute. It's not about what I can always get out of the meeting, but my role is to also allow my higher power to speak through me. So I'm participating, I'm present. All of those things are important to me. My step work, so my sponsor and I meet for an hour a week, and we get in the big book. So I literally, I've been in the big book before my sponsor because we read it at meetings, but I didn't read it otherwise. So she sat with me. We literally the first page. Why is the first page blank? The first page is blank because this is a new beginning, because I'm setting aside everything I think I know, because I'm more interested in what I don't know than what I do. Why are the table of contents set up that way? What is the preface? All of these things. Sitting with another individual and reading it. Doing my homework if I'm given homework. But literally step by step going through that book. And what I love is I do that with my sponsees, and I hear things or see things that I swear wasn't there before. It never ceases to amaze me at a meeting or when I'm reading or that there's something I hear that I didn't hear before, or I didn't hear like I'm hearing it at that moment. So there's so much jam-packed in certain parts as well that it takes a while to process what they're actually saying. So doing that step work is critical. And then service to others, again, that can be as simple as holding a door for somebody, helping with coffee, cleaning up, running a meeting. It doesn't have to be cumbersome, but anything that gets outside of myself. Also, in the big book, it talks about how service to others, working with other alcoholics, is vital to permanent recovery. And that's why the concept of sponsorship, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is so amazing to me. Because that is what keeps me sober, is me being in connection with another alcoholic who gets me like nobody else does. And then the fifth thing is prayer and meditation, and whatever that means to you. That is an area I've been good with prayer. I've evolved in my prayers. So my prayers used to be like Santa Claus prayers before, and now they're more, following sometimes the AM PM prayer that's in the book, or one way that I just try to stay focused is at the end of the Serenity prayer, I'll say to myself, "Thy will, not my will, be done." And those are just little ways to remind myself that I'm not praying for things or for specific things to happen or to receive, but it's to do God's will, whatever that means to Him. Meditation is an area that I really have gotten more interested in, and know that that's an area that I feel my higher power pulling me to grow more. And a lot of that is just having quiet time to listen. And so I'm excited to continue to grow in that area for my own recovery. And some people are great at that. I'm not yet, but I'm excited to continue to learn from it. So as we went through the big book, we got to really step 4 and 5, which were very dreaded steps, I think. I think they're given a bad name. I loved that entire process. I was ready for it, though, so that probably has something to do with it. But I was finally able to lay out, who I was resentful towards, people, places, institutions who had wronged me. Why did they, what did they do to me? How did that impact my life? Be it, my ambition or my emotional security, financial security. And then my favorite part was that turnaround and what was my part in it. I had a couple difficult turnarounds. I had a turnaround on somebody who sexually assaulted me. That's very difficult to do a turnaround on. But I was grateful that I had my sponsor who had worked with her sponsor and other, you kind of field out those experiences of how to navigate that. There was really silly ones, like my favorite is Century Tell. So we had a lightning storm. It struck our house. It blew up our modem, and we didn't have internet for 2 days. It was terrible, and I was very upset. And I was upset with them because what I discovered through the process is that I was very upset because my children, who are teenagers, would not have internet for 2 days. And so we dig a little deeper on that. Why does that matter? And I realized that I don't want my children to feel pain, which is, I don't think, uncommon to a parent, but I wanted to protect them from any discomfort. And I realized that defect is one that I actually have that weaves throughout a lot of relationships, and that's me being a fixer or being a preventer. So, I kind of walk around and make sure that everyone's fed, because when we're hungry, we make bad choices, and that everyone's comfortable, and that there's no disruption, and that I'm just constantly navigating all of that. I realized through that turnaround that is really a fear that God doesn't really have my back, that God won't really protect my children, that, I can't really trust that, once my children are out of my grips, that they'll be safe. And I realize that when I stop things from happening, they can't grow from those things. We grow through pain and through experience, and I rob them of that when I stop something from happening. So all of that came from Century Tell, which I am grateful for. And all of those little experiences started to show my patterns. And what I love about Anna, and Anna's been doing this a while, so she's just very skilled, is, we have a binder, and I have a fears, and, we'd be talking, and she'd say, oh, write that down. Ooh, write that down. And so we would just have a very long list of many things that I had as defects or harms or fears that drove how I interacted with the world. And when we were on the way up here, we were talking about what our favorite step was. And I believe one of my favorite steps is step 6, as I reflect on it, because I was so ready for God to remove all of these crazy ways that I was interacting with the world. It was exhausting. I was trying to control everything and everybody. When they talk about the actor, and it's like I'm handing out the script for the day, and if one thing goes off that script, I'm a wreck. And why am I such a wreck? Because if something changes from the way I figured it out, then I'm out of control again. So all of that, I was working really, really hard. And I was working really hard even in recovery. So people would say, wow, you look like you have a great program, Rose. You're all over the place. Yeah, I'm all over the place, because if I sit still, I have to deal with what is in my mind, my heart, my body. I'd have to deal with me. So if I'm moving around a lot and doing a lot, and I'm involved in a lot, and then I'm busy. If I'm making raffle baskets or doing care and shares or whatever. Very, very busy. So that all was such a relief for me to say, God, I do not want to do this anymore. This is standing in the way of my usefulness to you. Please remove these shortcomings. I had an immense sense of shame that tainted everything from an early age, when I thought, I do not belong on earth. All of those ways that were exhausting and really just at the end of the day, it was trying to fill still that empty hole inside myself. And I realized through the steps, through the program, through the process with my sponsor that I am perfect just the way I am right now. And that is, I'm perfectly circled. There's nothing I can do. I can't work harder for God to love me more, and I can't mess up for God to love me less. And being able to finally see that has been a godsend. I've been, working with sponsees. They say a lot like, oh, don't you get tired of all these sponsees? No, I don't get tired, because I don't think that, in the big book they talk about, like, when I'm working with another alcoholic, I don't know if that person will stay sober, but I will. They talk about Lois, and when Bill was saying, like, oh my God, it's a mess. All these alcoholics have stayed here, and they've stolen from us, and they broke stuff. Oh, Lois, it's been terrible. And Lois said, no, it's you're sober. That's all that matters, is that he stayed sober. And I'm able to see myself through my sponsees. That allows me to continue this process, the continuous maintenance steps of seeing where I have been self-centered, self-seeking, and how to rectify that. I had some beautiful moments this last couple in May. I had a work trip to Chicago, and one of my big debacles in life was I had a career with Boys and Girls Clubs, was one of the top execs in Illinois in the Midwest, and not directly related to alcohol, but alcohol related, just poor decisions, bad boundaries, had to resign my position, and that was one of my biggest pieces of shame that I took around with me. And because of this process, I was able to make amends with, there was 8 people that I was able to sit with and to share, take ownership of my part in things, as well as share the beauty of this program and what you've all done for me. It was just the most amazing. It was a true testament to the promises of this program. So Friday, I think that was yesterday, my mom, she just turned 79 on Thursday, and she fell and she fractured both of her shoulders. And I remember it was just today, I was walking into, to see her in the hospital, and I thought to myself, I'm just going to have to tell these people, I don't have the capacity today to care how much you think about me, or if you think I was that exciting, or I don't know. I just don't have the capacity to, to worry, to fret. I went to print my thing, and my ink was out, and I was like, just forget it. You're just going to have to hear my story from my heart. And, I am so blessed that I am able to be present for her. I am so blessed by this program that I'm actually able to find gratitude in that it could be worse than it is. And to have the family of Alano specifically, I sit on their board, very close with that group, the people in the rooms who care, who ask me, are you okay, how are you doing, and actually wait to hear what I say. Those are just things that I could never have even dreamed from this program. I do recognize I still have, this is a journey, so unfortunately we don't get to, I don't get a diploma for finishing the steps, or, I just am realizing the last several days specifically that I am still struggling with, the keystone. They talk about building the arch of freedom that we'll walk through, and the keystone in that arch, which is the most important stone, is that I will quit playing God. And part of that I'm realizing is not just for me, not just to quit playing God, but I don't want to choose when I have faith. So if I believe this program can restore me, and through the grace of God, and only through a higher power, that I can be relieved from this disease, then I have to believe that it is possible for people who I love the most. And when I choose that, that's still me playing God. And I don't have to live that way anymore. And I do believe that this program is available and this freedom is available for anyone who wants it, if you're willing to do what they did. And I am so blessed to have the opportunity to share with you all, to know you, to call you my friends, and thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Rose. Well, it's